All right, today we're going to dive into a real classic, a revolutionary book on the whole purpose of education. It was written over a century ago, but you'll see it asks some of the most fundamental questions about how and why we learn, and honestly, the answers feel more relevant now than ever.
So, what is the true purpose of school? I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? We've all been there, sitting in a classroom, wondering, what is all this for? Well, the philosopher John Dewey took this question head-on, and he argued that the way we teach our kids is directly tied to the health of our entire democracy.
Now, to really get Dewey's vision, we first have to understand the problem he was trying to solve. He saw this deep, fundamental split in education, this massive disconnect between what happens inside the school and, what happens in real life.
Dewey basically warned that schools are always in danger of becoming these isolated little islands. See, instead of being a vibrant part of life, they can become just a place where you prepare for life, treating students like they're just candidates for some vague, far-off future.
And this split creates two totally different approaches. You've got the old blueprint on one hand, which kind of treats students like empty jars, just passively taking in information, memorizing it for some test down the road. But Dewey's vision is the complete opposite. It's all about active experience, about thinking that actually means something right now, and about treating education as a core part of living in the present.
So, if that's the problem, what was Dewey's big solution?
Well, it wasn't just some new teaching trick. It was a complete, radical rethinking of the whole goal of education itself. Okay, this quote right here, it flips our usual thinking completely on its head. For Dewey, education isn't a tool you use to get a job or to pass an exam. The goal of education is just more education. The process of growing is the entire point.
And when he says growth, he means something really specific. It's not about closing the gap between being a kid and becoming some kind of finished, static adult. Nope. For him, it's this continuous, lifelong process of remaking, reorganizing, and deepening our understanding of the world as we experience it.
And that brings us to his absolute core insight. Education isn't just preparation for life. For Dewey, the process of genuine education, of constant mindful growth, is life. A life that's fruitful, that's meaningful, and that's always expanding.
But here's the thing. This isn't just some lofty, abstract philosophy. Dewey actually laid out a super practical blueprint for how this kind of learning, this growth-focused learning, actually works. He said that any experience that really, truly teaches you something has two key parts. First, there's the active part, which he calls trying. That's when we go out and do something, right? We interact with the world. And second, there's the passive part, undergoing. That's when we experience the results, the consequences of what we just did.
But here's the catch. Just doing something and having something happen isn't enough to learn. I mean, you can make the same mistake 100 times, right? The secret ingredient, the thing that turns just plain activity into a real, genuine experience, is thinking.
And this really gets to the heart of it. We learn when we stop and reflect. We learn when we consciously connect the dots between our actions and their outcomes. That reflection, that's what creates meaning and insight and real understanding. That's how we grow.
Now, this is where Dewey's idea gets even bigger. This powerful model of learning wasn't just for you as an individual. He argued it was the absolute bedrock of a healthy, functioning, democratic society.
So when Dewey talked about democracy, he meant something way bigger than just casting a vote every couple of years. To him, it was a way of life. It's a society where people from all different backgrounds can share their experiences, communicate openly, and build a common life together. And he even gave us two clear tests to see how democratic a society really is. First, how many different interests do people actually share and talk about? And second, how freely do all the different groups in that society interact and learn from each other? For Dewey, any barriers between groups are fundamentally anti-democratic.
This leads to a pretty powerful conclusion then. A truly democratic society needs a very specific kind of education. It needs a system that raises active thinkers, citizens who see themselves as part of a bigger social team, and who feel a personal stake in the direction their whole community is headed.
It's been over a century since Dewey wrote all this,
But his vision for education and democracy still feels less like something we've achieved and more like a profound, ongoing challenge.
Ultimately, what Dewey is really telling us is that what happens in our schools is never just about the students. It is a direct reflection of the kind of society we are building for the future. You could say education is the workshop where the next generation of our community gets built.
And so this all leaves us with a final, really provocative question that Dewey's work forces us to ask ourselves. If education is truly the engine of democracy, what does the state of our schools today, their goals, their methods, their results, what does all that tell us about the health and the future of our democratic society?